hold on tight because I'm not going swimming for any cellular devices today. Alrighty, are we ready? You can put your arms up like you're on a roller coaster. Whee! Captain Kristen, that was a great splash! All right. Wow, welcome to the Halifax Harbour, everybody. I want to let you know this harbour is ice cold all year long, and while I do have specialized training to get you out of the water, I really would rather not have to use it, so please stay inside the vessel. If you look out over here, you're going to see the largest naval dockyard in all of Canada. That's the biggest one right there. It's slightly less cool when I tell you it's one of 2 naval dockyards in all of Canada, but the fact that we have the biggest one right here, I think that's pretty cool. Now, if you look over to this side, you're going to see the Casino of Nova Scotia. It was designed by the same people who did Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. Can you catch a whiff of the opulence of that place? Now, if you're really not enjoying my jokes and you need to gamble your sorrows away because of it, this is where I would recommend you do it. Now, we're going to continue along and you're going to see a large glass tower here. Behind that glass tower, there's another glass tower, and both of those towers, they're called Purdy's Towers, and in front of them is Purdy's Wharf. Now, the technology in these buildings is quite fascinating. When they were being designed in the 1980s, they knew that the sun was going to be beating down on the glass and it was going to be incredibly hot all the time. So they reached out to students at Dalhousie University, which is where I'm doing my master's degree, and they asked the students to come up with a way to cool the buildings down without using air conditioning, because air conditioning, well, it's wicked expensive and it's also not very environmentally friendly. Well, the students, they did some research, they did some designing, and they came up with a system called geothermal cooling. Now what geothermal cooling does is it sucks this ice-cold harbor water up through those pylons underneath the buildings, and it runs it throughout the towers all year long. And using this technology, these buildings save over 100,000 Canadian dollars a year in air conditioning use. They subsidize things like a daycare on the first floor of that building. Now that technology, it's used around the world. And well, the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, uses air conditioning, and that was started right here in Halifax. Now we're going to continue along. You're going to see the Marriott building over here. It's a very fancy hotel. And in front of the Marriott building, you're going to see 3 beautiful murals. Now those murals are typically designed by students from the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, but we also have a number of private artists here in Halifax as well. Now, we had our Halifax Mural Festival in early July, and it's just been such a joy to see all of the beautiful artwork going up around this city. It's been stunning. Now, we're going to keep on going, and you're going to see up ahead a building that says Salties on it. You see that tan building? Salties is where the privateering wharves are, and for folks who don't know what privateers are, they're basically legal pirates. And in the early 1800s, the legal pirating industry was absolutely booming here in Halifax. Now, all you needed to do to be a privateer was give a portion of your prize, which was all that booty that you were stealing from other people, to the Queen. She'd give you something called the Queen's Mark, and that was your little permission slip to go around the world and be a kooky little pirate. Now, I'm researching the early 1800s for my thesis, and so I've interacted with a lot of sources related to the privateers. And interestingly, a lot of people became partial investors or owners of ships during that time here in Halifax. And much like the dot-com bubble, the privateering bubble popped in the 1810s, and a ton of people went absolutely broke because of the industry. It was a very sad time to be a privateer in Halifax in the 1810s. Anyways, we have a harbor hopper coming up. We've been doing turf wars with the harbor hopper lately, and so we're gonna get our weapon ready. Would you like the honors? We're gonna crank it and spray. Alrighty. Let's do a big cheers as they pass by. I bet we can be louder than them. Alright, are we ready? Awesome job, thank you. Sorry, it's tripping. You lose. Isn't that so much fun? Anyways, we just passed by the Halifax ferry terminal right here. That terminal services 2 ferries over in Dartmouth, and if you look out behind us, you're going to see a beautiful Canadian flag flapping majestically in the wind. Underneath it, there's a Ferris wheel. That's where the Alderney terminal is, and there's a carnival going on at the Alderney terminal right now. It's super fun. Across the way, you're going to see Nova Scotia Community College and SCC, and a bit further down, there's a large white building with a blue door. That's where the Woodside terminal is. Now, it costs just $3 to take this ferry, and it's for a 3-hour ticket. So if you get back to the terminal before your 3-hour ticket is up, you don't have to pay to get back across. And my fiance, he lived in Dartmouth last year, and he used the ferry every single day to get to school, and he took photos quite often. So I got to see pictures of my 2 favorite things all the time. It was wonderful. Anyways, we're passing by the Queen's Mark District now. That large thing, that shiny thing standing tall right there, that's called a tidal beacon. It shines brightest at high tide and low tide. Now next to the Queen's Mark District, we have the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, the largest maritime museum on the North Atlantic coast. And 2 of its biggest exhibits are actually parked right out front. You can see the Amphibious. She was a research vessel. She did work in the Arctic Circle, and she's a very hardy ship. She survived World War I, World War II, and the Halifax explosion. And next to her is the K-181, that's the Sackville. And the Sackville is the last surviving Flower-class corvette in the world. And if you recognize the name Corvette, like the car that goes fast, similarly, this boat goes really, really fast too. It was used to chase submarines during World War II. Now, there's an interesting paint job on that boat, that blue and that white. It's called dazzle camouflage, and it makes it very difficult for enemy ships to see her. And so this boat was usually going so fast that by the time enemy ships figured out exactly what she was already gone. Very interesting boat. We can wave hello to the folks over there. Now the K-181, she's available for tours, so if you folks would like to go explore her and you have some time, I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful, beautiful boat. Now, we're going to continue along. You're going to see that white yacht right there. Behind that white yacht, there's a wooden warehouse. And that wooden warehouse was where you were all waiting to get onto the harbor hopper not that long ago. So we have come around full circle now here. Now finally give your necks a break. And if you look out towards the middle of the harbor, you're going to see George's Island. Isn't it a beautiful island? Now George's Island has a fort on it called Fort Charlotte. And there's also a signaling mast on there too. You can see it. It looks like the mast of a ship. Now there are tunnels going all underneath George's Island, and rumor has it there's a tunnel that goes all the way underneath the harbor and back over to the Halifax side. Now I don't know how true that rumor is, but if you happen to find it, you could probably write a really cool blog post about it. Now anyways, George's Island, it's available for tours. You can see that blue ferry over there. It's called the Kawartha Spirit. It takes people over to George's Island. And I must give you a little bit of a warning if you're interested in going out there. That island is chock full of garter snakes. Over 500 individual snakes to be exact. Now if you're like my mother and you hear the word snake and you immediately scream and drop dead, this probably might not be the trip for you. Garter snakes, they're much more harmless than you think. They're very, very scared of you. But I myself, I'm a snake enthusiast. I have a 4-foot long ball python at home. Her name is Coconut, and she's my best friend. So while I'm excited to see the noodles out there, I know not everyone else is. So that's just my little heads up for you in case you're thinking of going. Now, I'm going to get off the microphone here for a moment, and I'm going to come around and answer any questions you may have. This is also a great time if you'd like me to take a photo of you and your family. I'm more than happy to do that. So I'll see you all in just a moment.
Lagi mo yung phone mo, picture tayo. Lagi mo yung phone mo, picture siya. Ha? Yupi. Picture ka ng barko. Pahaba. Huwag puro pa tayo. Pahaba din.
Hopefully this December. Oh, congratulations. The big day, on the danger of being deported, it will be in December. My fiance, he's Canadian. You're safe. Would you folks like a photo?
Mahaba siya, no? Hindi ka lugi. Mahaba yung ito. We're out of gas! Para tayo nasa airplane. Look mo. Ayan yung parang sa Center Island na ano eh, taxi, di ba? Taxi ship. tagal natin. Haba na to.
This is the best tour.
Ganda kung nandun tayo sa likod kasi hindi natin na-video dahil dito sa harap eh. Next time, doon na tayo po presto pag bumalik tayo. Hindi natin kasi alam eh. May bridge pala dito. Oh. Bridge oh. Ganito na lang bilhin natin cab, ang pick-up. Ayun, talagang ship yun. Hindi yun ang pick-up. Siguro po ito, sasakyan natin pa uwi sa Toronto, abutin tayo next month. Ito sasakyan natin pa uwi Toronto. Pa uwi Toronto, ito sasakyan natin. Abutin tayo next month. Picture mo yung adanak ko, adanak. Ayun ang adanak.
Alrighty, you all look very nice in your photos, by the way. Now, I'm going to tell you about the Halifax explosion that happened during World War I. On the morning of December 6, 1917, there was a French munitions ship called the Mont Blanc trying to come into the Halifax Harbour. Now, the Mont Blanc, it was chock full of every single explosive you can think of, all right to the brim. And so they had a Bravo flag they were supposed to be hanging, and it's basically this big flag that says, "Hi, yes, I have dangerous cargo." But they had forgotten to tell everyone about this, and they had forgotten to put the Bravo flag up. So as they were coming into the harbor, they looked up ahead, and there was another ship that was weaving through traffic. They were going way too fast. They were being very unsafe. And this boat was called the Imo. Oh, I think we're a bit too far away. I'm not going to get it today. Oh well. I was all ready. Well, the Imo, it's a ship that's trying to get out of the harbor, and they're going very fast. They're being very unsafe. They're even going into oncoming lanes. And then the Mont Blanc and the Imo, they come face to face with one another, and they spend so long telling each other to move over the radio that before they realize it, it's too late, and they collide with one another at 8:45 in the morning. Now, out in the middle of the harbor, you're going to see large smokestacks that look like candy canes out beyond the bridge. That's where the Halifax Narrows are, and that's where the two ships collided. And as the boats were pulling away from one another, the metal scraped on metal, and that created sparks that then lit the Mont Blanc on fire. Now, the Mont Blanc, she was chock full of every single explosive you can think of, so this was really, really bad. Well, the Frenchmen on board, they jumped ship and they swam to shore, screaming at everyone to get away from the boat. Now, the Mont Blanc, she eventually drifts over to the Halifax side, and between 9:04 a.m. and 9:05 a.m. on the morning of December 6, 1917, the Mont Blanc explodes. Now, everything within a 2-kilometer radius of Ground Zero was absolutely flattened, and there was an entire area called Richmond, Nova Scotia, that doesn't exist anymore. When we rebuilt the place, we just called it the North End. Now this entire blast, it was the biggest explosion humankind had ever witnessed. It was only bested by the atomic bomb a couple of decades later. The blast was so loud you could hear it on Prince Edward Island. You could hear it on Cape Breton Island. And it shattered every single window on the Halifax Peninsula. The glass from those windows were thrown into the face of 200 people, blinding them instantly. It was the largest mass blinding event in Canadian history. Well, when it rains, it pours with situations like this. So that night, the worst snowstorm in 20 years made landfall here in Halifax. So all of those people buried underneath rubble were now buried under inches of snow. In total, 9,000 people were injured and 2,000 people unfortunately passed away. It was an absolute crisis here in Halifax. Well, Halifax reached out for help all along the Atlantic coast, and one city in particular came to their aid above all others. And that was the city of Boston, Massachusetts. Now, I like to pick on Bostonians for their driving, but they really are some of the friendliest people you will ever meet. Us New Englanders, we look out after each other. And Boston, they sent the entire graduating class of Harvard Medical School via train here to Halifax. And as the story goes, Bostonians were taking the windows and the window panes off of their own houses to be sent here to Halifax. Now, it's cold in Boston in December too, so the fact that they were giving everything that they had in order to help us here in Halifax is just such a moving story. Now, to honor the incredible work that the Bostonians did during Halifax's time of need, they stayed here for months, helping clean up, tending to the wounded, burying the dead. The people of Nova Scotia, they find the biggest, most beautiful evergreen tree in the entire province, and they chop it down, and they send it to Boston. So if you're in Boston around Christmas time and you see this big, beautiful Christmas tree hanging up in the Boston Common, you can know that that one was picked with love right here in Nova Scotia to honor the incredible work that Bostonians did during the province's time of need. I think that's a pretty great way to end the story. Thank you. We're going to be getting back onto land here in just a moment. Now, Captain Kristen, she's a smooth operator. She's going to get us nice and safely on. It does get a little bumpy, though, so make sure you're sitting nice and tight. She's also going to phone into Halifax traffic and let them know we're back on land. And there we go. Round of applause for Captain Kristen. Great. And now that we're back on land, I'm going to tell you about the sinking of the Titanic. This is intentional. We wait to tell you about the boat that went under until you're on land. Sometimes we have people from the cruise ships and we just never tell this story. But the reason that the sinking of the Titanic is relevant to Haligonian history is because we were some of the first responders to the tragedy after it happened in April of 1912. Now, the closest port to where the Titanic sank is actually the port of St. John's, Newfoundland. But it's wicked cold in Newfoundland, like all the time, and unfortunately the port was frozen over. They couldn't send any boats. But us here in Halifax, we are the second deepest unfreezing saltwater port in the entire world, second only to Sydney, Australia. So we sent 3 boats with all of the embalming oil in the entire city on those ships. Now, they arrived to the wreckage a couple of days later, and they collected hundreds of victims from the Titanic. Unfortunately, we ran out of embalming oil, so some of those people had to be buried at sea, but the rest of them were brought here to Halifax. Their bodies were processed at places like where the Dome nightclub is. Some of them were sent all over the world to be buried by their families, but a number of them are actually buried right here in Halifax. We have 3 graveyards with victims of the Titanic in them, and the Fairview Lawn Cemetery has over 120 victims, and it has one gravestone that stands above the rest. It says, J. Dawson on it. Oh, yeah.